Okay, so good morning. Today we are going to go over some tips and strategies for developing a research funding plan. Again, my name is Latricia Lawns, and I am the Research Development Administrator here in the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. So essentially, and this may be geared more so towards newer faculty, but again, there are some faculty who aren't all that familiar with the grant development and research development process. So they might not be new faculty, but this might be something new to them. So it's pretty much geared toward anyone who's interested in this topic. So first things first, when you're considering pursuing research funding, the one thing you want to ask yourself is, what is your overall research agenda? Basically, what are you most interested in? What's your area of expertise? Um, which research topics are of interest to you, and how does that fit in with your overall research long-term goals? Um, that could include anything from a career perspective to ways of which you're trying to expand your research. And again, when you do develop your research agenda, or when you have an idea of what it is exactly that you want to research, something to be considered is this, your long-term goals, which could span anywhere from 5 to 10 years. And there's going to be different phases within your research agenda that you want to consider. And that will essentially help you to place proposed research projects within the proper context. And what I mean by that is you're going to need different things throughout your research agenda. Um, your projects or your research might be in different phases at different times. So what you might need, at the beginning phase of a research project, you might not necessarily need towards the middle or towards the end of a project. So that's something to be considered. Your long-term research goals will help you to craft your funding plan accordingly. Like I said just a second ago, um, you'll be you'll enter different phases and stages of your research throughout your time working in that specific research field. Some things to consider are department expectations, which you probably should have gone over during the initial hiring phase. Something to consider, how does attracting or obtaining research funding affect your promotion and tenure? What about your publication record? Is it strong? Could it be stronger? Does your publication record is that also part of department expectations? Also, what types of research funding does your department prefer that you pursue? Whether that be educational type funding or community engagement type funding. Those are things that you probably want to discuss or revisit with your department chairs, just so you can get a better idea of the types of funding that you probably want to pursue. Because the reality is there are tons of different funding opportunities available. And the more you narrow your search, the easier it'll be to pinpoint the opportunities that work best for you. So a part of your research funding plan development, some key factors you want to think about, obviously, what's the focus of your research? Um, you know, is your research something that's widely researched, or is it something that's maybe not as well funded? That's something that you really need to think about. Also, you need to get an understanding of what your research needs are. What do you need in order to be able to carry out this research? Um, and also, this is a really important one. You really want to get a grasp of what the current research funding trends are. And I know a lot of agencies put out lots of information and newsletters and different updates on, what they are currently funding, what trends they're seeing, how much they're allocating in their budgets towards different research areas. Those are things that you need to be on top of, because it again will aid you in, you know, uh, pro- um, developing your plan for how you want to pursue these different opportunities. And also something you want to consider is your workload, your teaching load, any outside commitments. Obviously, everyone has a personal life outside of work. And these things have to be considered, especially when you're in the research, the process of finding different opportunities that fit your research. People don't realize how time consuming this could possibly be, because you have to consider the fact that not all, you know, not all opportunities for funding for your research are as obvious as some things. And what I mean by that is sometimes it takes networking and, reaching out to different colleagues and, having meetings with different people to find a perfect fit. Maybe there's a donor that might be interested in funding your research. So those are things to consider as well as you go along your journey in developing your research plan. So, going back to your research focus, and I know this seems like a silly question, but it's a very relevant question. Are you passionate about your specific research area? Because you have to think about a lot of research projects, they don't happen overnight. They don't happen in a year. Sometimes research is ongoing. Your specific research project may be ongoing, so it might take years. And there are different funding mechanisms available for that. Like, for example, you might pursue an NIH R01 type of mechanism, which lasts for 5 years. So ask yourself those types of questions. Can I see myself researching this particular area for an extended amount of time? And also be aware of the fact that research is ever evolving. Nothing really stays the same from day to day. So take that into account as you're developing your funding plan. You also want to um, know and understand or realize if your project is new or innovative. A lot of times, funders want not necessarily cutting edge ideas, but ideas that are often innovative and going in, new directions that hadn't been thought of before. Maybe it's a build-up off of previously researched ideas and areas, but you have to have something that's truly going to stand out. Otherwise, it looks like what you don't want is for your research to be considered run of the mill. We've done this before, you know, um, in that type of perspective. So constantly reevaluate your research to make sure that what you're proposing to funders is significant and that it is worth funding. You have to really sell your research. Um, and also, understanding how your research can be classified will tremendously help you in narrowing down the tons of opportunities that exist in the funding universe. Because what you don't want to have happen is your research is basically more of an applied type of research, and you're constantly or in your search you're coming across research funding opportunities for more basic types of sciences. So be really mindful of that. Know and really understand exactly what you're passionate about, what your purpose is, and what your goals are, and that'll help you to better understand what funding opportunities are a good fit for you. So this is also really important. What are your research needs? What type of a research project are you proposing, and consider what phases you might be in within your research project. For instance, if you're just starting out with a specific research project, you just have you have the idea developed, but you need preliminary data or pilot data to be able to maybe apply for a more larger scale research funding opportunity. I know we get that a lot. We have a lot of faculty members that are in the preliminary phase or they're needing funding for pilot data. And the best place, honestly, for those types of um, the best type and place to find these types of opportunities, honestly, is internally within your institution. I know our central research office, DOR, has seed program funding. Um, that can assist faculty members in pursuing or attracting larger external opportunities. Specifically, DOR has what's called the GEAR program, which is grants to enhance. Oh my gosh, it's slipping my mind, but it's basically it's the GEAR. It's on the DOR website, and essentially with this one, the major stipulation with this one is you're actually required to submit for a larger scale award, but essentially it does function somewhat as a seed funding program. And I know, like with CLAS, we offer our faculty members um, a few funding opportunities that can serve as seed funding. Specifically, we have our Research Progress Grant, and we also have a new award that we introduced this year called our RISE, which stands for research, innovation, and scholarly engagement. And it sort of functions kind of like a year in that the expectation is a scholarly product or a grant submission. So there are resources available to help you with things like that. Like I said, the best place for that, if you're looking for like preliminary or pilot data funding, seed funding, your best bet is to start internally. Also, maybe you're not into the sciences, maybe you're a humanities scholar and you need um, funds for travel to different archives for archival research for a book publication. There are various opportunities specifically for that. I know a lot of national or museums and different libraries offer um, different funding opportunities specifically for a specific archive that you might want to gain access to. So that might be something that you might be interested in. Also, again, you might want to look internally for your different, or whether that be through your department, through your college, or at the central research office at our institution, because they do offer funds for travel related to archival research and things of that nature. Perhaps you're looking for a fellowship, whether that be at another institution or just for the time to work on whatever project that you're currently working on. That's another thing that you could consider. And also, if you are more interested in large scale multi-year research projects, perhaps this would be good for someone who's beyond the preliminary or pilot data phase. Maybe they've gathered all of that information and they're now ready to pursue a larger scale um, mechanism. So again, you really have to assess specifically what it is you need in order to be able to carry out your research effectively. Another thing you might also want to consider, maybe you need equipment. Maybe that's like a driving force for you to be able to complete your research. So these are all things that you want to consider because just as they are listed here on this presentation, there are opportunities specifically designed for each and every one of these types of research needs. You just have to know where to look, and that I'll get into a little bit later. So this one is the biggie that I was talking about. You really, really, really want to be mindful of what research funding trends are because it fluctuates and it changes from year to year. You need to know what research is being funded specifically in your field. Once you narrow down specifically what your research interest is, then you want to start looking for funding opportunities that specifically cater to your discipline and your field of research. You need to know who's funding the research, whether that be federal, from foundations or corporate organizations. You need to be up to speed on exactly what's going on within those realms. And also, this is something that's often overlooked, but you need to be aware of what other researchers in your field are specifically saying about the research area. The best way to do this, I think, in addition to speaking with colleagues and things of that nature, there's a lot of research affinity groups that exist for people with a common interest and a common goal in that specific research field that you're in. So that's something to be considered. And research affinity groups could be as small as, a group of 5 to as large as a group of, 100. The best way to find out about things like this is networking. And, if the need arises, perhaps start your own research affinity group. You can, when you're at these professional organization conferences or presenting papers at conferences or things like that, just always be on the lookout for an opportunity to make a connection, because that definitely will help and aid you in your research funding journey. So this is, I love this aspect of my job, finding different um, databases that showcase, who's funding what. I think that's so cool. Just because you can like literally drill down what's being funded in your specific area. And so I have a few examples here. And honestly, these types of things you're not going to find in like funding opportunity databases like Pivot or Grant Forward. Those are more so geared for finding the funding opportunities. Usually when you find these types of databases that drill down what's being funded and who's funding it, honestly, that's going to come just from knowing your field of expertise. And a Google search also doesn't sound, it's not a bad idea either. So here is this is more like a affinity group, a funder affinity group for media impact, dealing with like communication and journalism. But it's pretty extensive as here, and I'll show you here. But basically what you can do is, say I'm interested in journalism or what have you, or funding in journalism. So you can basically go through here and see, the different types of funders that have been funding research in certain areas. And let's see, let's click on details. So yeah, it'll tell you the funder and the recipient name for that specific funder, which is Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And then if you want to drill it down even more, you keep clicking on details, and it gives you the subject, gives you the project title, and any other pertinent information that you might find valuable. Now, again, I believe this is through, what is it called? It's a specific platform that Foundation Center has specifically for foundation funding. And I cannot think of the name of it right now. Perhaps if I go back, I can find it. But yeah, this is a pretty helpful tool, because if you know the specific areas, say it's relevant to your area of research, you can drill down and see what's being funded in those specific areas. Let's play with the location. Let's say we want funding in Texas. Let's say the subject area is health communication, maybe. Let's see what comes up. Okay. Let's do this drop down. Okay. Let's do journalism, news, and information. Oh, and it breaks it down even further. See, this is really cool because you can get pretty specific. Let's do advocacy journalism. Okay. Oh, I guess that's it. So, these are the funders. Let's look at the grants. So yeah, so these are the different funders. This is the recipient name. Let's go and drill down even more. So yeah, and it gives you all the different the specific information um, um, for that particular award and that particular recipient. So, I mean, this is a really good way to figure out, you know, specifically what your chances are, what's the likelihood of, you know, finding funding in a specific area because it shows you exactly what's out there. Let's try looking at charts. Oh, and that's also pretty neat because it can show you, you know, the actual trends in funding. So yeah, so let's see. The other one that I wanted to show you guys. Oh, where'd it go? There we go. This one is in the beta phase still. So there, I've noticed when I've used it to like research something for a specific faculty member, sometimes it gets hung up because it's still in the beta phase. But the Aging Research Portfolio basically combines opportunities from private foundations as well as federal agencies that deal specifically with aging related research. So let's go ahead and click on this one. So yeah, so this one is really, really cool. It's very specific. Let's pick a topic within the psychology or behavioral and social sciences. Let's do psychology of aging. Mm, yeah, sensation and perception. So it tells you, so this is the number of projects and this is the total funding dollars that's been awarded in those. Now this one, it pulls data from like a long range of years. So I believe you can narrow it down if you want to. I'm going to try to sort this. See, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It gets hung up sometimes. But if you look at the bottom, it'll tell you top 10 investigators. Like this one gets really specific. It'll tell you the top 10 investigators in that specific area, top 5 universities that have been receiving funding, and it'll tell you how many projects for each university, top 5 companies that have been funding research in these areas. Again, it pulls information not just from private foundations and federal agencies, but also um, corporations and things like that. And then it also tells you about the different institutes that are funding research with the psychology of aging, and also top 5 funding organizations, which includes your federal agencies. So this is, again, this is a really cool tool if you're into aging research. But again, I was able to find this information by really drilling down, um, you know, into opportunities. Again, reading um, publications and looking at the acknowledgement section, that gives you like hints and clues as to where to like really start drilling down and looking for areas to fund your research. I can't remember exactly how I found this. I want to say it was from a Google search. But yeah, never be afraid to Google because it can lead you into finding, you know, really helpful information that's specific to what you're looking for. And I believe, but yeah, this one, I don't want to like get too detailed into it because it freezes up from time to time. Let's see, we can try, yeah. So it tells you, I think this is like a list of all the different organizations that they have on record as having funded, you know, aging research. So yeah, so this is a pretty cool tool. Let's see the other one that I had. Now this one is more geared towards humanities. So this one is pretty interesting in that it kind of gives you insight as to what humanities scholars have been being funded. It starts out with federal funding for humanities, state funding, private funding, not-for-profit humanities organizations, and the different trends in those areas, support for humanities research. So again, all of these things will help to give you an idea of what you can expect if you are pursuing opportunities within a specific area. Um, let's see, I wanted to show you, let's see, let's look at the federal funding for humanities from NEH. Yeah, and it gives you a synopsis of the trends, um, to give you a better idea of what you can expect. So yeah, it's a really cool resource. I like to refer people to it, because I always get questions about, so what's the success rate? And off the top of my head, I don't know it for every single agency or organization that exists, which is why it's a good idea for you to kind of research that on your own when you're developing your research funding plan. And some of these resources you can really, really drill down into. So I believe I had, oh, 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 there we go. And then USA spending. This one is from a federal agency perspective. So basically, you can go through here and kind of drill down what's being spent. Let's see, which one do I? Let's see, Spending Explorer. Okay, so if we go by agency, here, let me make this a little bit bigger. So if we go by agency, you can go here and drill down. Let's see, let's do Department of Agriculture. Let's say you wanted to look into nutrition programs. So if you look at the information regarding nutrition programs, $24.2 billion have been spent on that. Let's see. Research and education activities, cooperative state research, education extension, for a total of $917.2 million have been spent on that specific area. Let's see if we can drill down a little bit more. Agriculture, Food, and Research Initiative, special research grants. Let's look at this one. See how far we can drill down. Grants and fixed charges, 59.2 million. So you know that within special research grants within research and education activities, this is how much is being spent. So let's go back. And I think if you want to, where is it? Let's do Spending Explorer again, because there's a way to make this a little bit easier and look at it in a list form, I believe. Oh, there we go. If you wanted this in list form instead of the blocks, you could just click on here and go through here and look for the specific agency that you're looking for. That's the easiest way to do it. But yeah, this is a really cool tool to kind of see what the spending trends are for your specific area if you're dealing in particular with a federal agency. So let's see. All right. So yeah, again, if you're dealing with private foundation, unless you have like a specific funder affinity group type thing, like what I just showed you, the different examples of, you can always review foundation annual reports. Sometimes that information might be publicly available. Sometimes you might have to dig for it. But that's another good place to start if you're eyeing a specific foundation. Sometimes more than often they'll put the different grant recipients, the type of project, and the dollar amounts funded. Not all of them do that, but for the most part, from what I've seen, a good amount of them do. So, where do you look to find the funding opportunities now that you know what the research trends are? So, you can either go by the research trends and go directly to those funding websites, or you can use different databases and other mechanisms to find a specific opportunity that you might be looking for. So we have subscriptions, and when I say we, I say that meaning the University of Houston. We have subscriptions to Pivot and Grant Forward. Basically, all you need is an institutional email address to sign up for a free account, and that way you'll be able to browse the different opportunities that are available. These two specific databases pull together different funding opportunities from federal agencies, foundations, corporations, and other different nonprofit organizations. Also, grants.gov is a free resource available to you, and they only publish federal agency funding opportunities. Also, you want to double check with your institutional newsletters. I know DOR puts out a newsletter, I think, every week, Inside Research, where they give you news on different research happening at the university, as well as any um, specific funding opportunities that might be of interest to you. Again, you also want to check for internal awards. I know CLAS offers internal awards as well as the Division of Research. So just be on the lookout for those. We started an inaugural thing where we present I present I present, an overview of the different internal awards that are available, not only from CLAS but also campus wide. So just be on the lookout for things like that, and you'll usually find announcements of those types in the research development updates that I send out. Also, you want to be paying attention to journal articles in the acknowledgement sections. This is more so for, let's say you're in a research field or a research area that's not really well funded. This will be a good way to kind of find opportunities that might be of interest to you, because you're researching and you're looking through tons and tons of journal articles, and because it might be such a specialized, less well-known field. That's a good place to look for potential funding opportunities in the acknowledgement sections of the journal articles that you're reading. Again, look at other university websites, see what they're doing. What kind of funding opportunities are they posting on their websites as it pertains to, a specific area? I like to go through, like, if you're studying if your research area is really specific, maybe look at other programs that have, like, pretty recognizable programs in the area that you're researching, and see what information is available on their websites. Again, you want to look at professional organizations. A lot of times professional organizations have different funding opportunities, sometimes on a smaller scale, sometimes on a much bigger scale, but you definitely want to check all of the resources that are immediately available to you. And again, business industry, this might, with this one, it's kind of, I don't want to say iffy, but just be careful with this one, because you might have to go through, like, the corporate relations office, if you're dealing specifically with a business or industry partner. Typically, there's checks and balances related to this type of funding opportunity. So yeah, just be mindful of that. But that's not to say that you shouldn't pursue opportunities that are within business or industry. Just make sure you um, cross all your T's and dot your I's when you're pursuing that. So the last thing you want to do is get in trouble. Just kidding. So let's talk about your proposal approach. So you know the research funding trends, you know the specific sponsors that you want to target. Now you need to decide if you're going to respond to a specific request for proposals, which is otherwise known as a solicited proposal. Basically, this is when a sponsor puts out a request for a specific program and they want specific applications for it. Usually you can tell the difference between solicited and unsolicited. Solicited proposals usually have very specific due dates. Sometimes they could be one-time opportunities, and sometimes they can be not ongoing, but maybe they do it once a year or once every few years. So yeah, then also you might want to pursue investigator initiated, or otherwise known as unsolicited proposals. Now, I will say, like, specifically with NSF, typically about 50% of NSF proposals are funded through an investigator initiated proposals, and about 80% of NIH proposals are funded through investigator initiated proposals. So, and usually you'll be able to tell the difference. Like, for example, with NSF, you'll be applying to like a core program, and with NIH, their investigator initiated proposals are usually through their parent announcements. Now, for foundations, some foundations will tell you flat out if they allow unsolicited proposals. Usually, if they do, it's you have to submit what's considered like a letter of inquiry or a letter of interest first, so that they can kind of, see if the project might be a good fit or if it might sound interesting to them before they allow you to submit a full proposal. Usually, some foundations also do have like solicited proposals that are very specific. Um, but one thing to keep in mind with foundations and unsolicited proposals, I shouldn't say that. Federal agencies as well as foundations, they change foundations more so. They change their funding strategies from time to time as, the organization grows or expands or things like that. So you just want to be mindful of dates. One thing I can tell you with unsolicited proposals, you can pretty much expect when the due dates are going to be, just because like with NIH, for example, they use a pretty standard due date process, and it's usually in 3 cycles. Whereas with like a solicited proposals, it'll be a very specific date. And it might not be ongoing. Again, when you're considering unsolicited proposals and you're preparing your research funding plan, um, it's good to know, the standard due dates for unsolicited proposals, because it'll help you to assess how much time you need to devote to your proposal development process. So keep that in mind. And again, familiarize yourself with agency and foundation websites. A lot of times they tell you everything that you need to know on their website. If by chance there's something you're still unclear about, contact the program officer. You definitely want to build rapport with your program officer. And I say this, use it sparingly. Don't contact them for any little thing because they're busy, as you can imagine. But that's not to discourage you from contacting them at all, because they want you to contact them. They want to make sure that what you're proposing is actually a good fit before anybody wastes their time and it's actually not a good fit. So definitely get familiar with your agencies, what their funding initiatives and what their funding strategies are, what trends you notice from them, like how have they funded things in the past? Do they have a particular passion for your research area? Again, a lot of times they'll even tell you the review criteria so that you can basically, in addition to the proposal format that they post, they'll give you the review criteria so that you'll be able to write for the reviewers, because you'll be able to write in conjunction with what the reviewers are actually looking for. So, and again, it tells you all of this stuff on the website. Just really, really, really study the different agencies that are particular to you. I'm not saying study every single agency or foundation that exists, because that can be very time consuming and very draining. But once you narrow down different funders that are the best fit for your research, really study exactly what it is, their mission, their core values. Really, really, really get a better understanding for what this agency or organization stands for, because all that will do is ultimately help you develop your proposal. And so, points of contact that you'll need to be speaking with throughout this process, you definitely want to be speaking with any potential collaborators. Maybe your research, you have a good grasp on what you want to study or what you want to propose as research, but there's some things that you're just not as well versed in. This is where it's a good idea to maybe enlist a collaborator, and you want to be in contact with them throughout this entire process as you're developing your funding plan. Um, you also want to be speaking with your department chair. Perhaps they can give you guidance on specifically what it is the department expects from you, so you can have a better idea of when you need to start looking for funding and what types of funding opportunities you need to be looking for. Department chairs can also point you in the right direction or give you guidance on specific areas that you might be interested in looking for funding. You never know. So stay in contact with them, because it can only help you. You definitely want to be in contact with your research administrator, specifically when you have found a funding opportunity, you've narrowed your search, and you found the opportunity or opportunities that you want to apply for. And not just at your home institution, you also want to be speaking with potentially the collaborators institutional research administrator. With this, basically, when I say keep in contact with research administrators at your collaborators institution, it'll basically be your research administrator and their research administrator talking. They'll probably do most of the talking on your behalf. And again, you also want to be in contact with program officers at different organizations. They only serve to help you through this journey. They want you to ask questions so that you can make sure that your project is an absolute good fit for what they are looking for. And one thing to note, and I see a lot of people do this, yes, you want to make sure that your research is a good fit for an organization, but what you don't want to do is change your research to fit an organization's initiatives. That's what you absolutely do not want to do, because in that way you're jeopardizing the integrity of your research. So just be mindful of that. Not all opportunities will be a good fit for your project, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean that one doesn't exist that's the perfect fit for you. So just be mindful of that. And lastly, again, you want to reach out to any colleagues or mentors. I recommend that you find a funding mentor when you first start your faculty position or throughout your faculty position, because they can also help connect you with potential resources or potential um, funding opportunities. And pick someone who's pretty knowledgeable about the grant writing process, the funding search process, because they can give you pointers and give you guidance on what best practices and things of that nature, because they've actually experienced it and they've done it themselves. So don't be afraid to reach out to people. Again, that's why I always encourage you to network, 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 because you never know who you'll meet or who you'll have something in common with. And that can oftentimes lead to either collaborations or future funding opportunities. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so if no one has any more questions, I guess I'll see you guys later. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you.